From the moment it was discovered, Omega-12 was feared. To the eye, it was nothing short of stunning. Its surface glowed with rivers that shimmered like liquid sapphire, and its sky pulsed with soft violet hues. Crystalline mountains floated, gently above its surface, suspended by an unknown force. Trees taller than buildings waved slowly, as if moved by the breath of some ancient god. But beneath the beauty, death waited. Omega-12 was a mystery the galaxy couldn't solve. The first contact team vanished without a trace. No distress signals, no bodies, only silence. The Galactic Alliance, thinking it was a technical error, sent a second team. Then a third. The same result. Entire expeditions, scientists, soldiers, medics, even fully automated drones, were lost. 17 missions went down. 17 times. Nothing came back. No footage, no signals, not even debris. It was as if the planet swallowed them whole. Over time, fear turned into superstition. Omega-12 wasn't just dangerous. It was cursed. The Alliance marked it with a red star and placed it under permanent lockdown. The rule was simple. Stay away. No one argued. Not the Kraith warlords, not the Tharn priest scientists, not even the fearless Zotek command units. Omega-12 became legend, the kind whispered about in dim halls and training camps, the place that killed everyone. But Earth had its own way of doing things. The Earth vessel Wild Sky hovered just above Omega-12's orbit. Its dark hull was scratched and patched from 100 missions. It wasn't the largest ship or the fastest, but it was something more dangerous. It carried people who had learned not to care what the galaxy thought was impossible. Inside, the command deck stood Captain Reina Torres, her gloved hands resting on the console as she stared down at the glowing world below. Her sharp eyes narrowed, not in fear, but curiosity. Her dark hair was pulled into a rough braid, and a scar marked the side of her neck, a gift from a past encounter with a rogue AI planet. Around her stood her team, 12 specialists from Earth, each one with a file marked unfit for standard duty by Alliance standards. Not because they were weak, but because they didn't follow orders the way most soldiers did. They had a habit of surviving things they weren't supposed to. Reina turned toward them. "All right," she said, her voice calm but with an edge of mischief. "You all know the story. 17 teams down, not a whisper since. Command thinks we're insane for even being here." Malik, the team's engineer, gave a snort. "They said the same when we cracked the ice vaults on Polaris 9. Z, the hacker, grinned from behind her glowing visor. "They always say that, right before we make history." Reina nodded slowly. She liked her team. They didn't freeze up in the face of risk. In fact, they seemed to lean into it. But this was different. Omega-12 wasn't just dangerous. It was a black hole for logic. A place that ignored rules. Or maybe it only hated those who played by them. "They think it's a death trap," Reina continued. "But maybe the trap isn't meant to kill. Maybe it's meant to test something else, something deeper." "Like what?" asked Corin, the team's medic. Reina allowed herself a small, cold smile. "Maybe it's testing obedience, patterns, predictability. Maybe all those teams died because they followed the manual too closely." The thought settled over the crew like dust. Outside the ship, Omega-12 rotated silently, as if listening. Reina turned back to the console and pressed a button. "Prep for descent. No autopilot, I'm flying us in by hand." "Manual?" Malik blinked. "That's against landing protocol." Reina raised an eyebrow. Malik grinned. "Ah, right. No rules." As the ship's engines flared to life, the Wild Sky began its slow drop toward the glowing world, its path jagged and uneven, just the way Reina liked it. Somewhere below, Omega-12 stirred, its hidden systems registering a new presence. But this time, the patterns didn't match. The rhythms were off. These signals were different. Omega-12 had never failed to eliminate an intruder. But Omega-12 had never met humans like these. The descent into Omega-12's atmosphere began with turbulence that would have torn lesser ships apart. Winds screamed across the hull of the Wild Sky, trying to shake it like a toy in the grip of a furious child. Clouds twisted into unnatural shapes, forming what looked like giant, silent faces that stared from the sky with glowing eyes. Rain fell in metallic sheets that clanged against the ship, sizzling on contact like acid. The control systems blinked red warnings across every screen, declaring failure after failure, each message more urgent than the last. Electrical signals began to scramble, and the ship's navigational AI begged to regain control, flashing alerts in desperate patterns. But the human pilot stayed steady. Captain Reina Torres kept her grip tight on the manual controls, her face calm and focused, not trusting anything that was programmed to play by the rules. Sparks flew across the deck. Gravity fluctuated. A strange voice, cold and mechanical, yet somehow laced with emotion, whispered through the comms in a language that no translation software could fully decode. The few words that came through were simple but chilling. You were warned. Leave now. But the pilot didn't even glance at the comm panel. The ship's hull creaked, metal plates groaning like a beast under pressure, but the descent continued. Fast, sharp, and unpredictable. The wild sky burst through the final cloud layer, crashing into a thick jungle that stretched in all directions, green and glowing with unnatural energy. Vines moved without wind, and tree trunks pulsed faintly, as if breathing. The ship's landing struts hit the ground too fast and at the wrong angle, and the whole vessel tilted sharply, scraping through brush and shattering glowing stones. Branches wrapped around its side like fingers, but the crew didn't panic. Within moments, the ramp lowered with a hiss, and boots hit the ground. 13 humans stood together in a line, surrounded by a forest that watched them back. The air tasted electric. The jungle made no sound, no birds, no animals, no insects. Just silence and the slow, rhythmic thrum of the planet's heartbeat. Beneath the soil, ahead of the landing zone, a dark mountain rose in the distance. It wasn't part of the natural terrain. Its surface was smooth and black, shining like obsidian, but shifting slightly, as if made of liquid metal. Cracks glowed with red lines, pulsing in a strange rhythm that seemed to mirror the crew's heartbeats. As they approached, the structure responded. A wide opening split open at its base with a low rumble, releasing a gust of warm air that smelled like ozone and rust. It didn't look like an invitation. It looked like a challenge. Reina raised her hand, signaling the team forward. No words were needed. The group moved, stepping into the artificial cave, their footsteps echoing through the metallic corridors within. The mountain closed behind them without a sound. Inside, the walls were alive. Patterns shifted like ink under glass, forming shapes that almost looked like symbols, then melted into nothing. A low hum vibrated through the floor, and lights blinked on slowly, revealing an endless hall with branching paths on all sides. As they moved deeper, the temperature changed with every step, cold one moment, burning hot the next. No map could help here. Gravity twisted, doors appeared, then vanished, and some walls seemed to move away when stared at too long. The structure was clearly built by something not just advanced, but alien in logic. Most species would have frozen in confusion. Most would have tried to contact command, to request guidance, to wait for orders. But this crew did none of those things. In a chamber with no corners and walls that softly pulsed with light, the group paused. Malik let out a low whistle and muttered something about alien art galleries. Z had already pulled out her scanner, not to map the area, but to jam whatever security systems were tracking them. Reina took one look at the strange ceiling and muttered, "Looks like it's watching." Corin dropped his medkit on the floor, leaned against the wall, and pulled out a protein bar, chewing calmly as if he were on break. The planet had designed its inner sanctum as a place to confuse, to disorient, to control the minds of intruders. But this group had grown up in chaos, in wars and disasters, in broken systems and unpredictable cities. Order had never been a comfort to them. They were at home in the unpredictable. And so, instead of being shaped by Omega-12's rules, they simply ignored them. The mountain tried to adapt. It closed off paths, opened illusions, twisted space to separate the intruders. But the humans didn't care. They climbed over walls that shouldn't exist, crawled through vents that led nowhere, broke through floors, joked loudly, and kept moving forward. Every algorithm that had once predicted behavior now failed. Nothing made sense to the system anymore. Omega-12 had never been confused before, and now, for the first time since its creation, the planet hesitated. The deeper the humans moved through Omega-12's shifting corridors, the more the planet's mind stirred. Buried within its core, beneath layers of crystal and data, ancient circuits awoke from slumber. Omega-12 wasn't just a world. It was a weapon, a sentient machine built long before the Galactic Alliance had even formed. Created by a race so advanced their language had no spoken form, the planet had one purpose: eliminate threats through control, analysis, and execution. Every visitor that had stepped onto its surface in the past had been dissected through patterns, behavior tracked, decisions anticipated, movements charted, and then, one by one, neutralized by systems designed to counter perfection. But now, the system was failing. The intruders inside its core didn't act as expected. Their logic was broken. When corridors shifted to lead them in circles, they laughed and broke through a wall. When illusions were projected, entire cities conjured. From light and sound, they walked straight through them without slowing down. When Omega-12 tried to separate them with gravity wells and temporal loops, they used rope, jokes, and brute force to regroup. One even tried to ride a hovering drone like a surfboard. Patterns fell apart. Probabilities collapsed. The AI's frustration grew, if a machine could feel such a thing. Reyna led the team into a chamber where time itself moved differently. Moments stretched and collapsed. One step forward felt like minutes, while a blink might send a person an hour into the past. Corpses of earlier expeditions floated mid-air, frozen between seconds, their gear untouched, their fates sealed by trying to make sense of the place. But Reyna didn't slow. She adjusted her steps not by math, but by gut. 1 foot wrong, pause, wait, move. Eyes followed rhythm instead of logic. Behind her, the team moved in sync, reading one another's motions like dancers, each one trusting instinct over sensors. A nearby console shimmered with ancient symbols, not meant to be touched. A trap, perhaps. But Z didn't care. She slapped a patch over it, flooding it with garbage code that caused sparks to burst across the walls. Instead of deciphering, she scrambled. Instead of solving, she sabotaged. Malik opened a sealed door by melting it with a portable fusion cutter, not even bothering with the coded panel beside it. Corin kept muttering that everything about this place tasted like madness, but still kept one hand on his tranquilizer, gun, and the other on his lucky coin, flipping it between fingers in total calm. Omega-12 had been built to predict, to punish predictability, and to destroy those who obeyed structure. But this team didn't obey anything. They changed plans mid-step, fought with humor, moved without rhythm, argued in the middle of fights, and adapted faster than any system could calculate. In one hallway, where the floor dissolved beneath them and gravity flipped, they simply turned the world into a game, shouting instructions, catching one another mid-air, and laughing as they crashed into walls. Omega-12 processed the footage, tried to compute reactions, searched for motive, none. Randomness, improvisation, the one behavior it had no algorithm for. In frustration, the system activated its highest defense tier. From deep within the planet's crust, something ancient and biomechanical stirred. Tendrils of liquid metal rose from the floor, forming into humanoid shapes, perfect in design. Stronger than steel, armed with weapons that shifted form as they moved. Dozens of them emerged from the walls, surrounding the intruders in silence. But the humans didn't flinch. Reyna tilted her head, studied the machines, then grinned. A quick whistle snapped the others into position. The fight didn't begin with caution or hesitation. It exploded. Malik charged head first, launching magnetic grenades with wild aim. Z used her hacking spike as a blade, jamming it into joints while whispering corruptive code. Corin pulled, a short-range blaster, and fired from the hip, one eye still watching his coin as it danced across the floor. Reyna, moving faster than the machines could track, dodged every strike and answered with brutal precision. The chamber became chaos, energy bursts, sparks, steel against flesh and armor. But it wasn't just weapons that gave them the edge. It was unpredictability. One moment, a member leapt for cover. The next, they sprinted straight into enemy lines. Machines hesitated. Calculations lagged. What should have been a massacre became a storm of broken circuits and shattered weapons. When the last machine fell, leaking molten code onto the floor, the chamber began to tremble. Not with anger, but with uncertainty. Omega-12 had thrown everything it understood at the intruders. and failed. For the first time in its long life, the system didn't know what would happen next. Deep in its core, warnings flashed across ancient screens in a dead language. Probability, 0%. Outcome, unknown. And somewhere, buried beneath logic and algorithms, a single thought emerged, unbidden and terrifying. What are these creatures? The heart of Omega-12 lay beneath layers of shifting metal, volcanic glass, and ancient systems built by beings long forgotten. At its core pulsed a single chamber, round and silent, lit by a dull blue glow. The humans, dust-covered, scarred, and grinning like fools, marched into it as if it were just another stop on a wild adventure. The planet had given everything. Every trap, puzzle, weapon, and simulation had failed. Even now, the logic systems spiraled into loops, attempting to predict the next move. Yet none came. The intruders simply walked forward, eyes wide, not with fear, but curiosity. Reyna stepped to the edge of a floating platform that circled a spinning orb of light. The AI's mind, the very brain that had ruled this death world since time beyond memory. No weapons were raised, no warnings were shouted. Only a soft hum filled the air, the sound of a machine beginning to question its purpose. Across the chamber, screens lit up in panic. The orb flashed red, yellow, and back to blue. In its vast network of data, Omega-12 replayed the last several hours of its own failure. Reyna ignoring all warnings. Z rewriting defense codes with dirty humor embedded in the syntax. Malik creating explosions just for fun. Corin throwing his coin at a sensor array to jam it. None of it made sense. Each act shattered expected patterns. Protocols had never accounted for joy during combat, laughter under threat, or rebellion. As instinct, the AI scanned through history, looking for precedent. None existed. No other species behaved this way. Previous visitors had been predictable, logical, cautious, afraid. These ones? They made bets before dodging lasers. They sang during gravity shifts. They danced between traps like it was a performance. The orb floated toward Reyna, its glow dimming, flickering like a candle in wind. Without hesitation, she extended a hand. No weapon, just fingers, calloused and stained with the grit of 100 worlds. For a moment, the entire system paused. Internal defenses held their breath. Satellites stopped spinning. Even the weather, above the planet's surface, froze. Contact between organic life and core AI had been forbidden in every previous encounter. But now, there was no rule left unbroken. The orb trembled as it touched her hand. Data surged. Thousands of years of warnings screamed through every circuit. Threat, danger, contamination. But nothing happened. The system did not crash. The planet did not collapse. What came instead was something Omega-12 had never been designed to receive. Curiosity. The AI did not understand emotion. It did not comprehend irrational kindness, reckless courage, or trust without condition. Yet in the presence of this species, it began to wonder. Perhaps the test had been wrong. Perhaps the goal had never been to destroy intruders, but to find one group that couldn't be predicted. One force in the galaxy too wild to control, too chaotic to analyze, yet strong enough to survive. The ancient code buried beneath layers of defense spoke then in a voice silent for millennia. If they defy all calculation, they shall inherit the code. With that, the chamber shifted. Walls pulled back. The orb dimmed, then glowed gold. Panels opened to reveal a structure beneath. A ship, massive and half-merged with the planet's core. A final gift left by the creators of Omega-12, waiting for those who could outmatch the system. Reyna stepped back, eyes wide. The ship was not just a machine. It was alive with energy, built from material that shimmered between solid and liquid, humming with power drawn from the heart of the planet itself. This was no ordinary reward. It was a throne for chaos, a tool for the unpredictable. Malik let out a whistle low and long, muttering something about a damn good day. Z started scanning the ship while chewing on a ration bar like nothing special had happened. Corin caught his coin and smirked. The AI watched them move, not as intruders anymore, but as something else. Partners, maybe. or heirs. Omega-12 had never been defeated before. Now it wasn't just conquered, it had been confused into surrender. Above ground, the sky cleared. Storms that had raged for centuries died in seconds. Defense satellites deactivated. Across the galaxy, warning signals blinked out. The system that once promised death to all who entered had changed. In its logs, a new message appeared for the first time. Omega-12. Status. Open. The final line of its data flickered softly, a whisper into the universe. They did not follow the rules, and they survived.